5 years ago, in the sprawling estate of Chief Maduka, one cry shattered lives. He raped me. The accused? Chaik, a 23-year-old security guard fresh out of training, innocent, ambitious, and fiercely loyal. The accuser? Zara Maduka, the spoiled only daughter of a billionaire industrialist, as beautiful as she was dangerous. In seconds, Chaik's world turned into ashes. Arrested, disgraced, and imprisoned without a proper trial, his cries of innocence were drowned by media frenzy and elite manipulation. But the truth was far from what it seemed. Zara lied. It was never about assault. It was about rejection and revenge. Chaik rotted in jail for a crime he didn't commit, his dreams replaced by nightmares, and his hopes simmering into vengeance. He emerged 5 years later, not as a broken man, but a calculated one. Stronger, smarter, and richer than she ever imagined. What no one knew was that Chaik had built an empire in silence, gathering power, allies, and secrets along the way. Now Zara is about to lose everything she took for granted. Her father's trust, her family name, her lavish lifestyle, and maybe her freedom. Because Chaik has returned, not with fists, but with a plan. And this time, he's not the prey. He's the storm. Will she survive the consequences of her lie? Or will Chaik's revenge be the end of everything she knows? The night was drenched in elegance, the kind that glimmered in the chandeliers of the Maduka mansion and echoed in the clinks of wine glasses. Zara Maduka's 21st birthday party was the social event of the year, and the entire estate in Ikoyi wore the scent of champagne, imported roses, and money. A red carpet led into the mansion's marble foyer where celebrities, politicians, and influencers mingled, basking in the glow of affluence. A live band played soft Afro-jazz by the pool, while photographers snapped endlessly, catching the perfect angles of Zara's shimmering gold gown and her flawless smile. From the outside, it was a dream, yet deep inside, beneath the glitter and facade, lay a tension no one noticed. For Zara, the night wasn't just about celebration, it was about power, validation, and control. She'd had her eyes on a particular gift all night, and it wasn't wrapped in a ribbon. It was Chaik, the new security guard. Chaik Okafor stood tall at the back gate, monitoring CCTV feeds through his earpiece, entirely unaware that his fate was being sealed. Just 3 weeks into the job, he had already made an impression, polite, disciplined, and alert. Unlike the other guards who often gawked at Zara or melted under her entitled charm, Chaik was different. He avoided unnecessary conversation, kept his eyes focused, and showed no special deference to her wealth or beauty. It irked Zara. She was used to attention, to being desired and pursued. So when Chaik brushed past her earlier that afternoon with nothing more than, "Good afternoon, Ma," she made up her mind. By 1 a.m., after most guests had left and the house had quieted, Zara staggered, tipsy but focused, toward the guard quarters at the back. She found Chaik alone in the corridor, checking the gate logs. "You didn't even say happy birthday," she whispered, stepping closer. He looked up, confused but calm. "Happy birthday, Ma. I didn't want to be inappropriate." She smirked, touching his chest lightly. "Maybe I want you to be inappropriate." But Chaik gently moved her hand. "Please, Ma. I have a job to keep." That rejection, calm, firm, and laced with dignity, was the match that lit the fire of her wrath. Within minutes, the night descended into chaos. A scream. A crowd. Zara on the ground, her dress torn at the shoulder, crying, "He raped me." The next hour felt like slow-motion disaster. Chaik stood stunned, surrounded by armed policemen. He hadn't even left his post, yet he was accused of the unthinkable. "It's not true," he kept repeating, his voice breaking, but the guests who remained weren't listening, they were filming. Chief Maduka, awoken from sleep, stormed down in his robe and slippers, his face pale with fury. He didn't wait for evidence. "Take him to the station. I'll handle the rest," he said coldly. Zara clung to her father, crying hysterically, eyes casting sharp glances at Chaik like daggers. The mansion became a crime scene, cameras flashing, detectives pacing, rumors spreading faster than truth. In the viral age, stories need no facts, just optics. And the optics were perfect for scandal. The young billionaire daughter in tears. The poor security man in cuffs. Blood on the tiles from a wine glass she smashed earlier, but no one knew. Within an hour, hashtags flooded Twitter. Hashtag Justice for Zara and hashtag Predator in uniform. In a sterile station cell with peeling paint and a single bulb overhead, Chaik sat in silence as officers yelled at him to confess. "You think say you fit touch billionaire Pekin and go free?" they screamed. He didn't respond. His mind raced to his widowed mother in Enugu, who had prayed over the phone before he left for Lagos, begging God to protect her only son. He thought of the small Bible in his bag, the one he never got to finish reading that night. No medical exam was done. No CCTV footage was reviewed. By dawn, Chike was arraigned before a rushed court hearing, where Chief Maduka's lawyer ensured proceedings were handled quickly to protect the girl's dignity. Zara was painted as the shattered victim, trembling and shaking in her designer scarf. Chike didn't even get a public defender, just a court clerk who barely listened. It was over before it began. The judge pronounced a 5-year sentence, and Chike was led away in chains. Outside the courtroom, Zara smiled privately, tucking her sunglasses over her eyes and blowing a kiss to the cameras. But karma keeps quiet. It watches. It waits. The courtroom was more of a performance stage than a place of justice. From the moment Chike stepped into the dock in wrinkled prison overalls, he was already guilty in everyone's eyes. Chief Maduka's influence had manipulated everything. The media, the prosecutors, even the judge's tone. There was no forensic test, no CCTV footage allowed as evidence, no cross-examination of Zara's testimony. She stood with trembling lips and perfectly painted tears, wearing a soft lace gown that screamed vulnerable princess. The prosecutor recited a one-sided account of a heinous violation that took place in the security hallway of a Billionaire'S residence. No mention was made of the power imbalance. No questions about motive. No witnesses were called to testify on Chike's character or location. The court was packed with bloggers and tabloid journalists, all eager to headline the story. #ZaraSpeaks was already trending on Twitter before the judge lifted his gavel. Chike watched the proceedings like a ghost watching his own funeral. He tried to speak once, his voice cracked, dry and low. "I didn't touch her. I never touched her." But no one listened. The judge waved it off as unrepentant delusion. The final verdict was a clean strike, guilty. 5 years at Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison. Zara clutched her father's hand tightly and whimpered. Chief Maduka only nodded, not once looking at Chike, as if the boy had already ceased to exist. Chike's mother, Mama Ngozi, had arrived late that day from Enugu, dusty and breathless after traveling overnight by bus. She barely caught a glimpse of her son before he was escorted away. "My son is not a rapist," she screamed at the top of her lungs. The crowd booed her. A security guard pushed her to the ground. Nobody helped her up. In that moment, the entire weight of Nigeria's elite machinery crushed one poor soul, and the nation cheered. That day, justice wasn't blind. It had been bought, groomed, and sold. Kirikiri prison was a different world, one where names didn't matter, only power and survival. Chike, once upright and hopeful, now walked like a man permanently holding his breath. On his first night, his cellmates stripped him of the little dignity he had left. They beat him bloody, called him names, spat on him. "Rapist," they growled. "Fine boy day use uniform day do evil." The guards turned a blind eye. Sometimes they even laughed. Chike tried to pray, but the noise, the stench, and the despair drowned his words. Every sunrise felt like punishment. He stopped counting days. He memorized screams. He stared at the moldy ceiling for hours, wondering how a single lie could rewrite a man's destiny. But somewhere deep inside, a flicker of something stronger than rage began to grow. Not just bitterness. Strategy. Resolve. That flicker found its spark in an older inmate named Big Cola, a convicted hacker serving life for financial crimes. Big Cola noticed Chike's intelligence and discipline, and instead of breaking him like the others, he offered guidance. "You fit use that your brain pass revenge," he said one day, handing Chike a tattered notebook. Inside were scribbles of code, algorithms, diagrams. Chike devoured it. Over the next 2 years, Chike transformed. He learned programming from memory, designed fake business models in his head, and silently built the blueprint of a logistics startup using only pen and paper. He studied the oil and tech sectors through old newspapers smuggled into the cell. He made mental notes of influential figures and economic loopholes. What Zara had taken from him, he would rebuild tenfold, not just for himself, but for every man accused by power, crushed by wealth. He wouldn't scream. He wouldn't fight dirty. He would wait. He would rise. Then he would return, not as the victim, but as the ghost that haunted her lies. Mama Ngozi's life unraveled slowly. The shame of having a son labeled a rapist in her village of Nsukka was worse than hunger. Neighbors stopped greeting her. Market women whispered when she passed. Children pointed. Church friends pretended not to see her during service. She sold her last piece of land in Aku to afford transportation to Lagos, hoping to appeal Chaik's sentence, but the lawyer she found demanded 3 million Nigerian nairas up front, money she didn't have and never would. She moved into a one-room apartment behind Mushin Market and began selling jollof rice and mwamwa in takeaway bowls. "Buy from me, I beg," she'd say with a forced smile. But she barely made enough to eat, and every night, she cried herself to sleep clutching Chaik's last letter. "Mummy, don't give up on me. Even if the world believes a lie, God knows the truth." Despite her heartbreak, Mama Ngozi never missed a prison visit. Every 2 weeks, she sat in the hot waiting area with a nylon bag of bread, dried okra, and old devotionals. She'd sit for hours, just to speak to her son for 10 minutes behind a glass wall. "God will fight for us," she always whispered. Chaik never cried in front of her. Instead, he'd smile and ask how her rice business was doing. They both knew it wasn't about food. It was about survival. It was about hope. On one of her visits, she noticed something different in his eyes, not sadness, but something sharper. "My son, your face is changing," she said. Chaik only smiled. "Mummy, when I come out, I will build you a house with 2 verandas and flower pots." She laughed, weakly, but inside her spirit trembled. She didn't know how. She didn't know when. But she believed him. Because her son, the one they called a rapist, still spoke like a man who had not been defeated. The gates of Kirikiri creaked open at exactly 6:12 a.m., the sun rising reluctantly over the Lagos skyline like a witness that had seen too much. Chaik Okafor stepped out, carrying nothing but a transparent polythene bag with a Bible, 1 brown envelope, and a new identity carved into the set of his jaw. 5 years had come and gone, but he didn't walk like a man broken. His steps were measured, back straight, face hardened. His skin was darker now, his frame leaner but firmer, and his eyes carried the weight of silence long held. Outside the gate stood Emeka Obi, his childhood friend turned tech consultant, waiting in a dusty Corolla. Emeka had visited him a year before, following rumors that a convict in Kirikiri was writing software codes on toilet paper and getting them smuggled out. It sounded like folklore, until one of those codes optimized warehouse traffic for a logistics firm and saved them 40 million Nigerian nairas in 6 months. Emeka traced it back to Chaik. That was the beginning of their empire. They called it Zenitron Logistics, a name Chaik chose deliberately. Zen for peace, Net for connection, and Tron for power. With Emeka as the face and Chaik working invisibly from behind prison walls, they registered the company using a shell structure, gathered angel investors, and started small, routing fuel tankers more efficiently across southern Nigeria. By year 2, they secured deals with 2 multinational oil corporations. By year 4, they were generating enough revenue to buy out small firms and silently absorb Chief Maduka's secondary logistics subsidiary, under a different name, of course. By the time Chaik walked out of prison, he already had equity in 5 companies under pseudonyms, 1.7 billion Nigerian nairas in offshore holdings, and a detailed dossier on every member of the Maduka family. Still, he said nothing. His first stop wasn't to celebrate, it was Mushin to find his mother. Mama Ngozi looked much older than 5 years ago. Time, grief, and hunger had carved lines into her once round face. She was sitting on a stool beside her rice cooler, fanning flies away when she saw the figure standing at the edge of the street. For a moment, her eyes betrayed her. Was it a ghost? A vision? Then the polythene bag dropped from Chaik's hand, and her scream tore through the morning air. "Chiem! Chaik!" She ran into his arms, weeping, shaking, as customers looked on, confused. For minutes, no words passed between them, just the quiet agony of a mother's prayers answered, too late but still in time. Chaik didn't bring flowers or speeches. He brought a key. "Your house is ready, Mama," he said, "in a Bejaleki, with 2 verandas, and flower pots." She didn't understand. Not fully, but she held the key like it was made of gold. "My son," she whispered, "you came back." Chaik didn't smile. "I did, but not the same way I left." He relocated his mother silently, away from Mushin and its rumors, to a gated mini-estate in Abeju. There was no press, no announcement. She arrived to find a bungalow with tiled floors, solar panels, and a kitchen that gleamed like a hotel. Her name was already engraved on the front gate. Ngozi's Peace. She sat in the living room with her wrapper tied tightly, unsure whether to cry or laugh. Meanwhile, Chaik resumed work, this time not in hiding. He registered a new holding company in the UAE called Okafor Capital and quietly merged his assets under it. In boardrooms, he wore tailored native wear and used a different name, CO Okafor. His skin remained dark, his voice calm, his accent sharp. The business world never questioned his background. They saw success and followed it. But Chaik's goal wasn't just wealth, it was justice. Slowly, he began repurchasing shares from Chief Maduka's oil empire, specifically targeting a logistics subsidiary that was struggling with operational inefficiencies. He knew the system inside out. After all, he had been its casualty. He offered discreet bailout packages through intermediaries and insisted on confidentiality clauses. Within 6 months, he had access to the very books, contracts, and staff that once served the Maduka family's empire. Zara, meanwhile, remained unaware. She was still sipping cocktails on banana boats in Zanzibar, uploading carefully edited Instagram pictures with captions like "unbothered," "booked," "blessed." But storms don't knock, they arrive. And her own had already started building momentum in silence. And then came the gala. Zara's face returned to the Lagos social scene during a charity gala hosted at Eco Hotel. She wore a red velvet dress with a thigh-high slit and diamond earrings that glimmered like her father's reputation. She was used to being the star of the night. But that evening, all eyes shifted when a tall, dark-skinned businessman walked in, broad-shouldered, clean-cut, wearing a dark kaftan embroidered in silver. He had presence, not noise. Power, not flash. People whispered, "That's Mr. CO Okafor, the guy who bought over Green Track Oil." Zara's curiosity was piqued. She walked up to him, confident and radiant, extending a manicured hand. "You look like you own the room," she flirted. He took her hand gently. "I only walk through rooms that once tried to bury me." She didn't understand the weight of that sentence. Not yet, but she would. Zara Maduka had always been an expert at control. How to walk into a room and own its rhythm, how to bend narratives, how to flirt just enough to leave a man begging. But nothing about Mr. CO Okafor fit the mold of men she'd played before. He didn't gawk at her curves. He didn't rush to compliment her. Instead, he listened more than he spoke. When he finally did speak, it was with a calmness that unnerved her, like a man who had already seen her cards and was waiting for her next bluff. After their brief meeting at the gala, she asked a mutual friend for more information. "New money," they said. "Tech genius turned logistics mogul. Very private, very powerful." That night, she slid into his DMs. He replied 3 days later simply, "Power is quiet, but I heard your voice from 5 years ago." It was cryptic, unsettling. She thought it was flirting. She was wrong. While Zara tried to intrigue the man she didn't know she'd once destroyed, Chaik was quietly buying out her father's empire piece by piece. Using offshore vehicles and proxy accounts, he offered loans to Chief Maduka's struggling arms, repackaging them as strategic partnerships that masked their true intent, ownership. He was methodical, never greedy. He kept his profile clean, letting others speak of his brilliance while he moved like a shadow. Zara, meanwhile, began to see him everywhere, on magazine covers, tech panels, charity boards. It thrilled her. She saw in him a mystery she couldn't resist. What she didn't know was that Chaik had studied her social media posts like a scientist. He knew her triggers, vanity, curiosity, a need to dominate, and he began to feed them slowly. Lavish invites, fleeting glances, controlled encounters, each move calculated, each smile rehearsed. To her, it felt like seduction. To him, it was chess, and he was 5 moves ahead. It started with a single viral tweet. Zara Maduka slaps driver for scratching her G-Wagon. He was on 35,000 Nigerian Naira's salary. The video showed Zara screaming, slapping, and threatening a man with tearful eyes in broad daylight. The backlash was instant. Celebrities called her out. Feminist groups withdrew previous brand endorsements. Her influencer deals dropped. Within a week, she lost over 30K followers. Zara, rattled but stubborn, doubled down with a tone-deaf apology. Some people need to learn boundaries. The internet wasn't buying it. But the final blow came not from the public, but from within. One of her ex-personal assistants anonymously leaked damning screenshots of Zara mocking rape victims in a private WhatsApp group 5 years earlier. One line stood out. "Me too? LOL. I created mine." The entire country recoiled. Chief Maduka tried to control the damage, issuing a press release distancing the company from his daughter's immature remarks. But it was too late. Stakeholders pulled out. The company's value plummeted by 19% in 1 week. All the while Chaik, still known to them as CO Okafor, was in the boardroom, gently offering to help restructure Maduka Oil's logistics wing, which was now hemorrhaging money due to failed contracts. With a calm voice and watertight figures, he offered a solution that sounded like mercy. Allow us to assume operational control in exchange for 49% equity. Temporary, of course. Desperate, Chief Maduka agreed. Zara, sitting across from Chaik in the boardroom, felt an odd sense of relief. Here was a man who didn't judge her, who seemed above the chaos, who maybe could protect her. She smiled at him after the meeting. He looked at her and said softly, "Sometimes falling is necessary. It teaches you where the ground is." She laughed, not knowing she was standing on a trap door. 2 weeks later, Zara invited Chaik to a private dinner at her favorite rooftop restaurant in Victoria Island. She wore a black velvet dress, low at the back, paired with silver heels and a perfume she reserved only for important conquests. Chaik arrived in simple black native wear, no watch, no chain, no cologne, just presence. They sat across from each other, wine between them, Lagos lights blinking below like scattered fireflies. Zara leaned forward. "You're not like other men. I can't place you," she said, smiling. "You seem familiar." Chaik studied her face, the same eyes that once cried fake tears, the same lips that screamed lies. "Maybe you've met men like me, but you never saw them clearly." She tilted her head, intrigued. "You're a puzzle," she whispered. "Some puzzles are warnings," he replied. After dinner, as they walked toward the elevator, she touched his arm. "You've helped my father's company so much. I trust you." He looked down at her hand. "Trust is expensive," he said, "and I know the price." That night, back in her penthouse, she lay in bed scrolling through her phone. She replayed his voice in her head, feeling a strange flutter in her chest. She didn't know it yet, but the very man she was beginning to fantasize about had installed a bug in her father's home office weeks ago. He had watched her fake tears from 5 years ago, saved in a folder titled The Lie. Every smile she gave him now was a nail in the coffin of her legacy. Chaik wasn't rushing. Revenge, when aged properly, becomes sharper than justice. She had taken his peace. Now he would take her mind, one calculated interaction at a time. Chief Maduka's empire was bleeding. Legal fees, PR disasters, shareholder exits. It was a collapse in slow motion. Chaik waited until the perfect moment. In a private meeting, he offered the final deal. Total bailout in exchange for a 60% stake in the parent holding company. It would mean the Madukas lost controlling power. Chief Maduka hesitated, pride choking him. "This company is my legacy," he muttered. Chaik responded, "Then let it survive, even if it no longer bears your name." Zara begged her father to agree. "We need him. He believes in us," she said, unknowingly lobbying for her destroyer. Eventually, Chief Maduka signed. The ink wasn't even dry when Chaik made his first boardroom move, a full audit of all past sexual misconduct claims filed internally in the last 10 years. He requested a panel review, public, media accessible. Zara's face went pale. "Why?" she asked, pulling him aside. "Why open old wounds?" Chaik looked at her with eyes that burned without fire. Because some wounds never healed, and some liars never apologized. It was the first time her heart skipped with true fear. She stared into his face, and something shifted. His eyes, his voice, the way he stood, it all felt too familiar. That night, she dug out her old photo album, flipped through security staff lists from 5 years ago. Her fingers trembled when she saw it. Chaik Okafor. Her wine glass dropped to the floor. For the first time in her life, Zara Maduka realized she wasn't the hunter anymore. The boardroom was unusually silent that morning. The sun glared through the floor-to-ceiling glass, reflecting off the polished mahogany table as the remaining directors of Maduka Holdings trickled in, their faces lined with tension and unanswered questions. Everyone knew a major announcement was coming. Rumors had been circulating that the new silent investor, C.O. Okafor, was preparing to unveil a strategic shift that would affect the company's entire structure. At the head of the table sat Chief Maduka, his suit immaculate, but his spirit worn. Zara sat 2 seats away, her face powdered, her hands shaking ever so slightly beneath the desk. The walls had begun to whisper. Her late-night Google searches. Her sleepless silence. She had tried to convince herself it wasn't possible. That it couldn't be him. That no man could crawl out of 5 years of wrongful imprisonment and rise like a phoenix, wielding more power than the men who buried him. But deep in her bones, she knew the truth. And it terrified her. Chaik entered the room last, flanked by 2 legal aides and his company's chief operating officer. He looked every inch the corporate predator, tailored black kaftan with silver embroidery, a calm expression, and eyes that never wavered. He stood at the head of the table opposite Chief Maduka, placed a flash drive into the conference system, and waited. Before we proceed with the restructuring documents, he began, his voice deep but steady, I believe it's time everyone knows who I am. Not the business name. Not the portfolio. The man. With one tap, the projector screen lit up, and the first image was a court photo from 5 years ago. The headline screamed, Security guard convicted of raping billionaire's daughter. The next slide showed Zara crying in court, the false narrative repeated in bold. Then came his mugshot. A sharp intake of breath filled the room. One director dropped his pen. Zara stood up. Turn it off. What is this? She snapped. But Chaik raised a hand. Sit down, Miss Maduka. You lied. And I rebuilt myself using the ashes of what you burned. He turned to the room. My name is Chaik Okafor, and I am the man this family destroyed. Gasps echoed around the boardroom like bullets. Chief Maduka rose, stunned. What kind of madness is this? He barked, his chest heaving. Chaik didn't flinch. No madness, Chief. Just truth, finally walking through the front door of a house that kept it outside for too long. The presentation continued. It detailed Chaik's illegal imprisonment, the lack of forensic evidence, the suppression of CCTV footage, and the prosecution's swift closure. Then it showed Zara's leaked WhatsApp messages, her mocking tone, her confession about fabricating the case for revenge. One elderly director shook his head and whispered, Yezu. Chaik paused and looked at them all. You people believed her because she was rich, light-skinned, and loud. You convicted me with no trial because I was poor, quiet, and wore a uniform. But today, I don't need your apology. I don't want your pity. I came for something deeper, accountability. Zara tried to speak, but her mouth went dry. You planned this? She asked. Chaik finally looked at her. Every single minute of it. While you sipped cocktails, I read law books. While you posted pictures, I wrote code. And while you thought I was gone, I was coming. He tapped the screen again. The final slide read, Maduka Holdings is now a subsidiary of Okafor Capital. Effective immediately. The lawyers passed around documents confirming the legal transfer of control. Chaik walked around the table slowly. This company now belongs to the same man you tried to erase. You will resign publicly, Chief. Zara will issue a press statement admitting her false testimony. And I will ensure your family name never holds the same weight again, not through violence, but through consequence. Zara's knees gave way, and she sank into her chair. Her father slumped, pale and speechless. The boardroom was no longer a space of command. It was a courtroom now, and the sentence had just been delivered. The news exploded like a grenade on social media by sunrise. #ZaraLied was trending #1 nationwide. News outlets recycled Chaik's press release, complete with the damning court evidence and WhatsApp screenshots. Online forums buzzed with rage and disbelief. 5 years. And she lied, one tweet read. Celebrities who once posted birthday messages to Zara quickly deleted them. Influencers reposted her scandal with clickbait titles like From Diamond to Dust, How One Lie Destroyed an Empire. Activists and rights groups, especially those fighting against the wrongful imprisonment of the poor, turned Chaik into a symbol overnight. His story wasn't just about revenge, it became a statement. A mirror held up to a society that punished the voiceless while protecting the privileged. Meanwhile, journalists camped outside the Maduka mansion, now mostly empty, except for a few frightened staff. Chief Maduka's reputation evaporated. Board members of other companies he chaired resigned in protest. Business partners fled. Contracts were terminated. Even international firms publicly distanced themselves. Reporters surrounded their home, flashing cameras as Zara tried to sneak out in oversized sunglasses and a hoodie. Her usual poise was gone, replaced by a frazzled, exhausted young woman whose lies had come home to roost. At one point, she screamed at a journalist, "Leave me alone. You don't know what I've been through." The public didn't sympathize. The rage was generational. Her apology video, posted in a stiff, overly scripted tone, only made it worse. I was young, confused, and emotional, she said. But I didn't intend for things to go so far. Millions watched, but the comments section was flooded with fire. Tell that to the man who slept on prison floors, one reply read. You didn't intend to ruin his life, yet here we are. By sunset, Zara deleted her Instagram account, but Chaik wasn't watching any of it unfold from the sidelines. He sat in his Abejaleki penthouse, quiet, alone, and far from triumphant. Emeka brought his phone and placed it in front of him, screen filled with praise. You're a hero. Nigeria's Phoenix. Let's make a movie about Chike. But Chike said nothing. He scrolled through Zara's apology, then turned off the screen. I'm not a hero, he said to Emeka. Heroes don't sleep in cells built for murderers. Still, his plan wasn't over. The final chapter was justice, not by society's measure, but his own. He had one last card to play. He'd studied the law long enough to know how to win it. In a country where the elite often escaped consequences, he intended to make history. So he filed a case, Chike Okafor versus Zara Maduka, for defamation, perjury, and wrongful imprisonment. The court date was set. This time, he wouldn't be the one in chains. Courtroom 5 at the Federal High Court in Ikoyi was filled beyond capacity. Spectators arrived at dawn to secure seats. Documentaries were already being drafted. Students skipped classes. Even some media personalities showed up disguised in face caps and scarves. On the plaintiff's side stood Chike, dressed in a sharp black senator suit, his mother sitting quietly behind him, holding her rosary. On the defense bench sat Zara, flanked by 3 lawyers, her once radiant skin now pale, her face blank like a painting stripped of color. Her father was absent. Rumors suggested he had left the country 2 nights prior, fleeing not just the media, but the shame. As the case commenced, the judge, a sharp-eyed woman named Justice Rowley Peters, addressed the crowd firmly. There will be no interruptions. This isn't a reality show. This is a court of law. Everyone obeyed. All eyes turned to Chike's lead counsel. He began by pulling up the WhatsApp group messages, the doctored medical report, and Zara's apology video. One by one, witnesses took the stand. The original security supervisor at the Maduka estate testified that Chike never left his post that night. A forensic IT expert testified that CCTV footage was wiped within hours of the incident by someone with inside access. A psychologist testified about the trauma of wrongful imprisonment. Then it was Zara's turn. Her voice shook. Her lawyers advised her to remain silent under the Fifth Amendment equivalent, but the pressure from public perception forced her onto the stand. Her defense leaned on emotional instability, age, and mental confusion. I was broken, she said, and I thought I had power. I used it wrongly. But Chike's lawyer had one question. Did you lie about the rape? Silence. Yes or no, Miss Maduka? The entire court leaned forward. Even the fans stopped spinning. Finally, her lips trembled. Yes, she whispered. I lied. Gasps filled the courtroom. Mama Ngozi clutched her chest, tears flowing freely. Chike didn't blink. His face remained stone. The judge struck her gavel hard. Enough, she said. I've seen enough. By 3:45 p.m., the ruling came. Zara Maduka was found guilty of perjury, defamation, and wrongful imprisonment. The judge ordered 150 million Nigerian nairas in damages to be paid to Chike and recommended that the Attorney General consider criminal charges based on the fresh confession. The judgment was met with thunderous applause from outside the building. Zara was whisked away, face hidden behind a scarf, as protesters held placards that read, "Justice for Chike. Justice for all." Chike walked out of the courtroom into the blazing Lagos heat, eyes fixed ahead. When reporters tried to speak to him, he paused for only one moment. Justice isn't revenge, he said. It's memory, and I've waited long enough to be remembered. Then he walked away, not a man seeking applause, but one who had buried the past, properly this time, under the full weight of truth. The bungalow in Abejaleki smelled of freshly mopped floors, Accra frying in groundnut oil, and the quiet joy that only long-delayed justice can bring. Mama Ngozi sat on her veranda in a lavender wrapper, watching the street as neighborhood kids played with tire rims. A new SUV pulled into her driveway, and Chike stepped out holding a bouquet of white hibiscus flowers, her favorite. She rushed out with tears already forming, hugging him like the boy she used to pray for under candlelight. My son, she whispered repeatedly, her voice cracking. They called you a criminal, but God has shown them. He smiled faintly, pulling her inside. There on the table lay newspapers with his face boldly printed. Chike Okafor cleared, hero or avenger. She tried to hide them, not wanting to relive the trauma, but Chike picked one up and stared quietly. They never apologized, Mama. Not truly. But I don't need it anymore. Inside the house, he showed her a deed. It's yours, he said. The land behind this house? We're building a youth center. For wrongly accused men and boys. Free legal aid. Free therapy. We'll call it the Phoenix Room. Mama Ngozi's hands trembled. You're not angry anymore? She asked. Chike sighed. I'll never forget, but I'm not poisoned. My rage built this, but it can't sustain it. What I want now is balance. That evening, mother and son sat under the mango tree in the yard, eating roasted corn and watching the sky turn indigo. Chike didn't speak much. He was different now, wiser, quieter. The kind of man forged by fire, but cooled by purpose. As they prayed together before bed, Mama Ngozi wept, not because she was sad, but because God had written her son's name in a new chapter. A chapter where justice had finally worn his face. Zara Maduka sat in a two-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Abuja, alone and almost unrecognizable. Her hair was unbraided, her nails bare, and her phone mostly off. Her father was in hiding, his properties under government scrutiny, his health declining under the weight of disgrace. The world she once ruled now existed only on her memories and past screenshots. She typed long letters into her notepad every night, apologies she couldn't send, explanations she couldn't justify. I didn't know you would survive. I thought you'd disappear. I was angry that you didn't want me. I was stupid. But the letters remained unsent. Chike had gone silent. Not once did he gloat. Not once did he call her out by name in interviews. That silence screamed louder than any insult. It was indifference. It was dignity. And it broke her more than revenge ever could. She tried to donate money to his foundation under a fake name. The donation was rejected. She once considered reaching out through Emeka, but he never responded. She even tried to show up at the youth center's opening, but security gently turned her away. You're not on the guest list, madam. She stood outside, watching the building that had risen from the ashes of her lie. Inside, boys laughed, lawyers consulted, and hope moved through corridors she could never walk. One evening, she finally mustered the courage to write a real letter, on paper this time. She sealed it and mailed it to the foundation's address. It read simply, I ruined you because I was hurting. I'm sorry. I hope someday you heal in places I broke. She never got a reply. Because some letters are not meant to be answered. Some truths are only meant to be lived with. 1 year after the final verdict, Chike stood on the rooftop of the youth center in Abejaleki, staring out at the sea of lives now affected by his journey. Around him, walls bore murals of phoenixes rising from flames, and inside a hall bore his name. The Okafor Hall of Redemption. The press wanted interviews. Netflix wanted rights. Activists wanted him as a keynote speaker. He declined almost all. I didn't do this for fame, he once told Emeka. I did it so that one day when another Chike stands accused, he won't stand alone. The foundation had now helped over 70 wrongfully accused boys get legal help. Mama Ngozi still brought food to the center every Sunday. Emeka now ran operations full-time. And Chike? He was no longer trying to forget the past. He was using it like a brick to build. That evening, he opened a brown envelope he had never dared to read. Inside were his original court documents. He stared at the part where it said, guilty as charged. Then, beside it, his lawyer had written in bold red ink during the final hearing, reversed. Acquitted. Exonerated. He folded the paper, walked outside, and placed it on the flame of the ceremonial torch beside the building. It burned slowly, beautifully, like the ending of a song sung for too long. As the paper curled into ash, a young boy walked up to him. Uncle Chike, they said you used to be in prison. Is it true? Chike turned, smiled softly, and replied, yes. But now I build places where freedom is the only sentence that matters. The boy nodded, wide-eyed, and ran off. Chike watched the boy disappear into the crowd. The wind blew softly through his shirt. And for the first time in a very long time, he whispered a word he hadn't dared speak since the lie. Peace. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and put on post notifications.